What's going on, everyone? My name is Jeff. So in this video, guys, I'm going to do an earnings preview for Aurora Cannabis, ticker symbol ACB, and really going back to December and January. That's when I made my largest entry into Aurora when it was trading around the $4 to $5 range. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this up front. I have no plans to sell my long-term position in Aurora before earnings this week. I don't think I'm ever going to get that cost basis back. And depending on what kind of results we get from the earnings report this week is really going to answer the question if I'm going to invest more into Aurora. Now, again, the stock could go way up and run back into the $9, $10 range, in which case I will just kind of consider this little pullback kind of a missed opportunity. But I do have a very, very large holding in Aurora, and it has performed very, very well. So a few things. First off, I'm still expecting quite a bit of volatility over the next couple of weeks. Back on Friday at midnight, that's when the trade tariffs here in the United States went into effect on China, and they got raised from 10% to 25% on $250 billion of goods. And so here's my opinion, guys. I think the market can start moving back into a bullish direction. I think the indexes will start trading back up, but every time any kind of news comes out about the trade war, expect volatility, okay? And to further that point, China has already said that they have plans to retaliate and tack on tariffs here to the United States. So if and when that does happen, I expect to see a big dip on the indexes again. So all I'm really doing, guys, is preparing you for a very volatile summer and possibly fall. We just got to kind of take this one day at a time. I'm really excited about Aurora's earnings, and the thing I'm probably most excited to see this week is going to be their revenue numbers. So do me a favor, guys, drop a thumbs up on this video. I appreciate all the support, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. This is what us old school traders call consolidation mode, okay? So Aurora had this big run up back into February and has made this pullback gradually and traded itself back under the $9 range. You guys, keep in mind, Aurora is one of the most highly traded stocks in the entire stock market on the long and short side, okay? That is not the part I am focused on at all, though. To me, this is a great long-term investment, and I'm very comfortable kind of watching this stock consolidate. It's just kind of trading sideways. It picks up a little value, it drops off a little value, very high volume. A lot of shares in, a lot of shares out. It outperformed the S&P from December to February. I think the entire MJ industry really outperformed the entire market. And then, of course, we have seen a big slowdown since then. And we have some companies that just simply aren't cutting it, okay? Kronos Group had their earnings report last week, and it was very disappointing. And of course, Tilray has been an embarrassment since their IPO last year and their huge run of $300. I feel Aurora and Canopy Growth are the two best companies to be invested in. And one thing I have noticed, Aurora comes to the table very prepared on revenue. And so we can deal with loss. I think Wall Street is expecting super model efficiency, and that Aurora should probably be trading like a textbook stock, like a Microsoft or a Procter & Gamble, but that is just not the case. These companies are still too small and still in full expansion mode, and it's just going to be a while before we see true fundamental greatness out of any of these cannabis companies. All right, so what we're really going to be looking for, guys, is two things on this earnings report. As you can see on the top line, the release date for Aurora is May 14th, 2019. That's in 2 days, and that's for the period ending in March. So we're not really going to be concerned with the EPS or even the EPS forecast. What we're really looking at is their overall net loss. This is the category that keeps getting these cannabis companies beat down on nearly every earnings report. These revenue numbers are going up dramatically quarter after quarter. As you can see over here in this right hand column, in May 2017, Aurora was reporting about $7.4 million of revenue, and now here we are 2 years later, and now they are reporting an expected $69.62 million. So there is quite a bit of tremendous growth in this company, but as the revenue forecast grows, so has their overall losses. And so I've really noticed that ever since ACB and Afria and CGC and Cron, all these have been on the American exchanges, they do trade a lot differently. because they're being graded under a completely different microscope. So I'm really anticipating a really good revenue number, but just keep in mind, I'm also expecting a high volume of loss as well. And that is where the stock does kind of trade sort of mixed for a few days after earnings. Analysts are kind of processing, company loss and company revenue and trying to find where they value at it. Either way it goes, I'm not looking at it that way. I see ACB as a long-term investment. And if they do take a pretty strong pullback on earnings, like I said, I plan to invest another large sum of money into them. And I also have a great amount of confidence in Aurora and the expansions that they have been making. And it would not surprise me to see maybe $73 to $75 million of revenue reported. And on their quarter 2 results, which was last quarter in February when they reported, they did have net revenues of $54.2 million. That was 82% year over year. And their cannabis net revenue, obviously that was $47.6 million. And like I mentioned, this is the number that was hard to digest for analysts, is that their net loss was $237 million. Now keep in mind, those figures are very forgivable. And we're not necessarily going to stop investing in these companies because their net loss is very high like that. These companies are still in full expansion mode and still dealing with a lot of regulation. And that is unfortunately just the nature of how these stocks are going to trade for a while. On the flip side, Aurora could come into earnings with an outstanding revenue number and a noticeably lowered net loss. And I think that could send the stock running back up over $9 or $10 a share. That is pretty much best case scenario, is that they beat on revenue somewhere around 4 to 10%. And then of course they carve into their net loss and try to lower those numbers quite a bit. Maybe if they could knock 2 or 3% off of their net loss from last quarter, that is what I think could potentially send ACB trading up strongly. If that is so, this come in a little over a month ago. That's when the broader markets were down, with the notwithstanding cannabis stocks that were underwater after Aphria reported fiscal quarter 3 numbers, and they came in very shy of consensus. Okay, and so Aphria kind of tanked because their revenue numbers were $10 million below consensus, and that sympathetically sent Tilray, ACB, Kronos Group, and Canopy Growth all down with it. And then of course last week Cron reported earnings. They had revenue of $6.5 million versus the Bloomberg estimates of $6 to $8.4 million range. And of course they came in on the lower side of expectations, which sent Kronos Group down, and that again crashed the MJ sector out again. And Tilray, Canopy Growth, and Aurora all took a sympathetic hit from that as well. Do not be upset and do not panic sell your position in ACB if analysts view their earnings report as still very inefficient. Okay, I'm going to look at it as another opportunity to buy on a dip. This is really what sets ACB different than all the other cannabis companies and sets them into that elite class. Probably with Canopy Growth, is that the management is working very, very hard not only to expand but to become more efficient. And so there you have it, guys, right there on the top line. ACB is set to report earnings on the 14th of May after the bell. Okay, and like I said, I will be tuned in and watching this one very, very closely. I don't think Canopy Growth reports earnings till next month. I want to say their expected earnings date is around 6/26, but sometimes these dates do change and fluctuate a little bit, and that's kind of the message that I want to send you all off with here today. I don't know if you're watching this video as a trader or a long-term investor. Just keep in mind, nobody has control over these earnings reports. What I'm really, really looking for and focused on is those revenue numbers keep going up. Like I talked about earlier in the video, those revenue numbers have increased almost 1,000% in 2 years. So there's really no telling what ACB is going to be capable of in 2, 3, or maybe 4 years from now. Their market share keeps getting bigger and they keep expanding, and they keep doing all the right moves to not only get the approval of retail investors, but also from analysts and institutional investors as well. So keep in mind, while we are investing in ACB, there is a lot of hedge funds that are investing in them along with us. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys. Go down to the comment section, share some of your earnings excitement with me. What are you forecasting for Aurora? What kind of revenue numbers are you looking for? And do you think they're going to cut that net loss down a little bit, become a little bit more efficient as a company? Thank you as always for watching the video, and have a great day.